ladies and gentlemen. It's Eric Coffin. I am here at the Toronto Metal Investors Forum, June 11, 2022. I'm here with Tim Moody. He's the CEO of Pan Global Resources. It's one of the companies I invited to MEF for a couple of reasons. They're in the Iberian Pyrite Belt. They're drilling a project called Escacena, and Tim has already made what looks like a pretty significant discovery. They've been drilling there for a couple of years now. I think they're up to hole 100 and something, and I don't think they've missed yet. It looks like they will have a substantial resource at La Romana, which is on the Escacena property, and obviously that's great. But I think what makes Pan Global particularly exciting right now is they added a very large land position. That land position had a number of targets on it, and they've been doing more gravity, more IP. They just did an airborne survey. They've been doing geochem. They have a much larger set of projects that look very similar to La Romana, and that's kind of what I want to get to here is all of these new targets that you're generating, and I know you're still in the process. I don't think you even have the filtered airborne back yet. Those guys are still working on that. But I wanted to ask you a couple things. One is, when you look at these new targets, and they're, like I said, you're still generating them, some of them look like they're even bigger, substantially bigger in a couple of cases. In La Romana, I mean, how meaningful, other than the basic question, like, yeah, obviously the size is meaningful, duh. But when you're looking at, at a plan map, it's got a bunch of gravity anomalies. How meaningful is the size of that anomaly? I mean, I know the initial gravity that you drilled to make the La Romana discovery, you had gravity maps, but you didn't have the data.
Yeah.
Now, because you're doing your own stuff, you have the data. So what does it add to it for you to be able to kind of model it and do the 3D thing and all of that?
Well, firstly, we've been collecting higher density gravity information, so much more detail. So that's giving you much better resolution in terms of defining the shape and strength of these targets, which we didn't have before.
Right.
So the first thing we're noticing with the new information is, one's giving some geological information, but it's primarily it's really resolving some of these anomalies much better. Some of them they've enhanced. We've confirmed existing targets, but now we're seeing new targets emerge. So I think that's really useful information. Can we get something from the size of those and strength of those anomalies? We can, to some extent, but it is geophysics.
Right.
If we don't have any rocks sticking out of the ground, there's a lot of variables that can come into that, and that's where the use of other layers of information is really helpful for us. And we're just starting. I showed today.
Yeah.
How effective some of the surface geochemistry looks to be. It's showing an anomaly over La Romana, which we didn't expect.
Right.
Now we're seeing other copper anomalies in some other areas. Well, on their own, that would be interesting. But when you put that on top of coincident with a gravity anomaly,
Right.
it increases the interest.
Right.
Same when it comes to the electromagnetic survey, the helicopter survey we did. If we have a conductor, an anomaly, again, coincident with either the gravity or the geochemistry, or both, then of course that did. So that's
the EM conductors are there. You kind of get something a lot more discrete from that, right? I mean, you sort of get this blob, this mass from the gravity, but the EM you get something that's kind of a lot more, sort of more linear and discrete.
Yeah, again, it's a real art to interpreting the helicopter, the electromagnetic survey information. So it really depends on geometries and what the conductivity of the rocks, surrounding rocks, etc., depth of the potential target. So again, there's lots of variables that come into that. But yes, it's some of those linear ones where you have a string of line after line saying this conductor repeated over several lines. And that gets really interesting. If you just have a single point, well, it's sort of interesting. But if you can put it, that forms a coherent pattern, and even more interesting. And as you saw with some of the slides today, you've got some of them that just line up with the gravity. So.
And I think it's important to point out. I mean, you're fully financed. You got enough money to go well into next year probably. You're about to, well, you're embarking, I guess, in a 20,000 meter drill program. If it's anything like last year, I would be surprised if that gets bigger, but,
Yeah.
so how are you gonna work this in terms of testing this large number of targets? I mean, how are you gonna go from target to target, or, does a rig change, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so no, it's a good question. So we've got 2 rigs currently on La Romana. So we're getting close to completing the drill holes we had planned there. Then we'll move those rigs onto these other targets. It's just we're advancing, as you see, we've got no shortage of targets. But
Right.
we're advancing some of those now to where they're drill ready. So targets like Sarcita or La Jarosa, these things are ready to drill right now. So the idea is we'll move the rigs onto those targets as they're ready.
Right.
There are some targets which look really attractive today, but we've been waiting for harvest, wheat or sunflowers to be harvested before we can get in there and do the ground follow-up. So sometimes the sequence, we would do things a little bit differently.
Right.
But we'll get to them all at some
And
point.
I think you said there was a 3rd rig coming in as well, right?
Yeah. We've got the 3rd rig already,
Okay.
so it's ready to move.
And I'm not expecting you to sign in blood or anything. Obviously, if a target's working out, you're gonna keep a rig and maybe more than a rig on that target as you move around. But, saying, and I don't know how many holes you would consider a legitimate test of a given target, but how many targets do you think, say between now and the end of the year, say, how many targets do you think you might be able to hit?
I'd like to think we can test at least another half a dozen targets this year. Yeah. So we can already see sort of somewhere between 50 and 70 drill holes on new targets. So it's that sort of scale program. Some of them are more straightforward than others. Some areas we might just do a reconnaissance hole, because we don't have access to the part of the target. So, but we've got, as you're saying, we've got no shortage of places to drill now. But we've had to be very methodical. We're really blitzing the area with lots of information, with lots of survey. It's not all people get, so let's say, not impatient, but want to see where's the results. Well, all that work is now coming together.
Well, and do you think you might be putting out, whatever, 2, 3, 4 releases that maybe walk people through these targets so they understand? Okay, this is why we're drilling. This is why we're drilling these ones first before all these other ones.
Yeah, well, look, I think what's happening here, because all of this information is now starting to come together. So you can see we're ready to drill on a couple of these targets. So I think when we start drilling these new targets, that will be news. We'll put something out about that and give more information about it. But we can see now that there's going to be a flow of news, which is good. I think what investors want to see more is more news flow, and that's what hopefully we'll deliver.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is it's been a great story all along. These guys did a great job discovering La Romana in the Iberian Pyrite Belt. That is the world's best VMS belt. But the reason why I think it's still such an exciting story is Tim and his team are going to be testing, like he said, hopefully half a dozen targets between now and year end. And each one of those targets individually has got the potential to be another La Romana or even something bigger. And I think, given how things went at La Romana, I think with half a dozen targets, and this is just the first 6, there'll be more. I really think the odds of Pan Global discovering another 2 or 3 La Romanas on this project is actually quite high. I think for a discovery story, I think the odds are actually extremely high for this thing. That's one of the reasons why I like it so much. Great story, great management, lots of cash, 3 drill rigs. This is one you want to keep an eye on because you could see a new discovery anytime. So it's Pan Global Resources, PGZ in Canada, PGRZF, I think it is. PGNRF, sorry, in the U.S. Pan Global Resources, great discovery story in Spain. Thanks very much.